Welcome, eighth grade artists. Hey, here we are, semifinal number 2. This is week 6 of the Art Madness. I am Mr. Smith, here as always with my art colleague down in the box beneath me here, Miss Eedle, and up above today, top of our little totem pole this week, the special guest, Mr. Meagher himself. Mr. Meagher, thanks for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. I can't wait to start discussing artwork. This is going to be great.
Science and art coming together gloriously.
Oh,
It's going to be delicious.
awesome.
All right, so Mr. Smith, do you want to talk about last week?
So in our first of 2, we have a second one this week, but our first of 2 semifinals, on to the final. Kehinde Wiley right here, American portrait artist extraordinaire. He moves on in our final. There you see your bracket. You see where everything has gone so far. Kehinde Wiley moves on. Miss Eedle, I'm not surprised by that.
No, I'm not either. We'll have to see where today goes, but I think it's going to be a very interesting matchup. We've talked about this before, but I think Kehinde Wiley might be our overall victor. We'll just have to see.
He's definitely the 1 seed in basketball.
So we're going Gaudi versus Eascher for today. So little refresher. We talked a little bit about Gaudi. He's from Spain. He does these large-scale architecture pieces that had a lot to do with nature, really showing kind of their own Spanish Art Nouveau style, very wavy surfaces, like that building you see up in the top there was supposed to kind of mimic the flow of water. So he really kind of takes these natural concepts and creates these beautiful large-scale architectural pieces that have color, shape, form, all those things that we've talked about throughout the year, and is really kind of unique and almost a little overwhelming sometimes when you look at them. There's a lot of detail, and they take a long time to do. So it's very different than when we talked about Corbusier, but again, these large scale pieces of architecture, I love them. What do you think, Mr. Meagher?
Oh, I'm fascinated by it as a Spaniard, and he's actually from Catalonia. If you know the people from that region, it really kind of epitomizes their love of beauty and their connection to religion and their love of nature. It really kind of captures what I think those people in that region really are all about. As a person who loves nature, you can see the lines and the shapes and the forms that he's taken from nature and kind of incorporated into his artwork. It's really, really fascinating to look at his work and just how much he appreciates beauty. You know, sometimes I think about these are churches and these are houses and things, and I you know, sometimes I drive around the United States and I see how every single house looks exactly alike, and I just think, oh, humans have a capacity for beauty that maybe they're not really kind of capturing in some of the architecture in this country. And when you look at this with all the ceramic work and the wrought iron work and just the appreciation for beauty, it really, really is impressive. It really, really kind of captures the best in humankind, I think.
Yeah, and just I think the level of detail and the use of the materials, you know, with even the concrete and the marble and things used in such ways that we don't even use them now. He was really kind of a revolutionary of not only what he visually created, but also his techniques and his approaches as well, structurally in terms of the actual architecture as well, which is really interesting.
Architects for a long time incorporated sculptural elements on architecture. These almost became sculptural as the architecture, and that was revolutionary. And he was among the first to really get some notoriety for it. You look, especially this image on the right, that apartment complex with the waviness and the undulation. That whole building is a sculpture, and that was so different.
And it really is impressive how he wants to be unique too. I mean, this is the late 1800s, and to capture that kind of beauty in architecture, he really kind of was different, and it really is different than a lot of work that you saw at that time or even since. He was unique, like the Catalan people really are. They want to be individuals. They want to be unique, and his work really is. I mean, that church there, Sagrada Familia, I can only imagine what that must feel like, going to church on a Sunday morning in a piece of art like that. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah, and inside too, there's not only that, but it's even to the smallest details, the stained glass windows and the light effect as it comes in. There's a real presence in these buildings, and it creates an impact on you. And I love what you said about driving across America and seeing our own kind of colonial constructs and how they all kind of look the same. This really questions, what should we consider to be good architecture? And just because it's what it is, like, is that what we should accept? So yeah, it brings up a lot of questions about looking in our own environment too, which I think is really good.
It's obvious when you look at Gaudi's work, he's passionate about some basic things: architecture, nature, and in many aspects, religion. You can see how those things are very passionate to him, and it comes out in his work.
Definitely. And then to totally contrast this, we now have MC Eascher.
Well, there's an enormous contrast here and a juxtaposition, if I may use a word there. But there's a strange overlap that I put into my head before we started this, in that Gaudi's work was looked at as, how can that exist? You know, it was so monumental. Eascher and a lot of his sort of architecturally inspired images, those can't exist. So there's this sort of impossible building going on here. Eascher, a Dutch artist known, I don't want to say mostly, but his most prolific work was his lithographs. And a lot of these are inspired by these dreamlike, surrealist sort of themes and imagery. The ones you see on here, you've got the hands creating the hands, and you've got this impossible. And if you're not following me on that element of it, folks, kind of stare at this architecture piece here in the middle for just a moment. That can't exist. The laws of physics, the laws of reality, it bends back in a way and comes forward in a way that it doesn't work. So there's this surreal quality to it. But again, Eascher is a 2D artist. Most of these are prints. Most of these are lithographs. We talked about it in the first time we introduced Eascher. These were drawn using different materials on a piece of stone. And it's a very difficult process to kind of master and come up with these different tones and to get these as detailed as they are. And Miss Eedle, who could speak more to the actual creation of these with far more experience in lithography than I have, it's very difficult. And he was an absolute master of it. There's an element of science to these with the way he brings the perspective together. There's mathematics with a lot of these tessellations that kind of flow in and out. And then again, that surreal dreamlike quality. You look at the ones here with the spheroids and him kind of staring into that crystal ball. So we're in a totally different realm here, literally, figuratively, with imagination and such. Mr. Meagher, what do you think?
You know, I asked myself, why did MC Eascher become such almost like a cultural icon? Like, why do teenagers hang Eascher prints on their walls, and why do they make calendars with an Eascher print every month? Like, what is it about his work that has really kind of appealed to the masses? And I think it kind of goes back to the idea of what purpose does art serve in any medium? Like, it forces you to think. It forces you to kind of investigate, like, what you feel. And there's reasons why you can look at an Eascher print for hours and hours, and every time you look at it the next day, you see something different, and it makes you think, and it makes you feel. And that's really kind of what art comes down to initially. As much as Gaudi, I think, sometimes embodied the people that he came from, the Catalonian people, I think I see like this character of Dutch people in Escher's work. Real kind of clean and mathematical and intelligent. And those are kind of characteristics that I really kind of connect with the Dutch people.
Yeah, I think a lot of times too, people really gravitate towards Eascher because his work is so complex, but there's also a real simplicity to the work too, that you don't need to have a strong background in art to understand and appreciate his work. And it's also fun in a sense too. There's like we talk a lot about kind of the optical illusions that come with his work, and oh, you could go up here, but oh, you can't get there, so now you got to come back down here. Oh, but that doesn't work. There's a real kind of fun and something always to discover, like what you said. So I think that's what makes Eascher such a strong contender, especially in our matchup here, but also, you know, what really gravitates anyone of any age to his work as well. What do you think, Mr. Smith?
I would like to bookend the Eascher conversation kind of where I started. You both have said you look at his work and you could look at it however many times and you can always find something new. You can kind of get lost in it. You could almost say that about some of the structures and some of the buildings that Gaudi designed. So there's parallels here. On the surface, you look at this architect versus this art, visual or two-dimensional visual artist, and you go, they're so different, but there's parallels that you can find. So I love this matchup, and I think Mr. Meagher, Miss Eedle and I, we always give our opinion here. I'm Miss Eedle. I'm going to jump the gun. I'm going with Eascher for the same reason that I went with Kehinde Wiley, and that's just the master of the craft. It's not that Gaudi wasn't a genius and a master of his craft, but man, the ability with the materials that Eascher shows, I can't get over it. I just love his work.
Yeah, we talk a little bit about lithography, and it's something that I think, you know, if you really like Escher's work, you should really look at it, because lithography is seriously so much time intensive work. To get one print is like, when I did it in college, it was like over 40 hours of labor, and you can't erase it. It's not like you can restart it. So I appreciate his master of craft because I've experienced it, but I just think there's something so whimsical and romantic and just amazing about Gaudi's architecture that when you stand in front of it, it just kind of takes your breath away. And like, there's nothing here that we see walking around that's like that. I'm also a huge fan of Art Nouveau. It's my favorite time period in art history. So I'll have to say Gaudi again, because that's just, I can't get over how amazing his details and his connection to nature is, that I love so much. What about you, Mr. Meagher?
Break the tie, Mr. Meagher, and give us the official vote.
This is like you said, Mr. Smith. This is a good matchup. This is like Duke, North Carolina kind of thing. It's a tough choice. You have Eascher with his clean, crisp work, the mastery of his craft, the ability to kind of include geometric shapes and everything in his work. It really is impressive, and there's a reason that Eascher has become as popular as he is in modern day. And then on the other hand, you have Gaudi, who's, I just love how unique it is, how different it is, how almost weird it is. I just love the weirdness of it. And like Mrs. Eedle said, you don't see a lot of that. And I like when art appears different and it steps out of the norm. And I mean, that's part of what artists do, is force us to look beyond what we see every single day. I think when I think about me personally, the one that I'm really gravitated to, because I love nature so much, because I love being weird and unique myself, and because I love the passion that you see in his work, I think Gaudi does it for me. It really, really, it is fascinating stuff, and I love it. And I wish there was more structures like that here in the United States. I think we got to start having churches and houses and an apartment complex that look just like that. That would be wonderful. Not to take anything away from Eascher, but my vote is for Gaudi.
I love it. I think the winner of this one, whoever wins this one, the kiddos that out there that support them and vote, I think that's going to be a fan base that's really passionate, because these are so different. You're voting because you really think one way. So whoever wins this is a contender next week. So
get out and vote, because now Mr. Smith and I have bets on going who's going to win. So now we got to see who's going to win, who's going to move on and compete against Kehinde Wiley for our final.
Mr. Meagher, thank you so much for bringing the science mind and the whimsy here today, sir.
My pleasure. Thanks, guys.
All right, bye, guys.